Hello, I'm Raymon Grace, President and founder of the Raymon Grace Foundation. Among our purposes are to reduce human suffering, in whatever form, and to reduce abuse on victims, unfortunate people, and we are having some success with this. This is what I want to talk about today. We're calling this today a blueprint for freedom because we believe we have found some ways that will help people become more free. I'll give you a little background on this. A few months back, I received a phone call from someone, and I will have to be a bit discreet on who and where and so on to protect other people. But the essence of the call was that human trafficking, which is what you and I would call the slave trade, is the third largest illegal operation on this planet. I had no idea it was that bad. So I listened to the person speaking, and they made a request for me to help with the situation. And my response was, I'm willing to help, but how will you know if it does any good? And there was a certain place on earth, and we will call it a transfer point, from where the people who had been captured or taken by whatever means were then transferred on to their places of destination, where they would be literally slaves of one type or another. Now, you probably didn't know it was this bad, and neither did I. So, at this particular place, there seemed to be a sufficient amount of surveillance of what was going on. So I asked the caller, what have you done about it? What have you done to stop it? And the answer was, nothing. We don't know what to do. We only observe it. I said, well, maybe I know what to do. Let me give it a try. And all I'm asking is, you give me feedback. It's over 2 months before I get any feedback. But it came in the form of a very enthusiastic phone call saying the human trafficking at this particular transfer point has been greatly reduced. Now, I have never been to this place physically. I do not know exactly where it is, but it was a large area of, I would guess, several hundred square miles. And I had simply used the techniques that I have developed over the years to change the energy in various places on this planet. I teach other people how to do this, and that's the purpose of this film, is to teach you at least enough to get you started. Now, I realize that most people don't have the confidence that they can change the energy at another place very distant on earth, and that they probably don't have the confidence that they could make such a difference. Well, that is a very disempowering belief system, because I believe we can do it. Not only we can do it, we have already done it. We have for several years helped people lower violence in schools, improve conditions in communities and workplaces. This was the first attempt that I had ever made to take on a project of this size, specifically geared to human trafficking. Now, let me make this very clear. What we're going to do here today, you can apply to nursing homes, jails, schools, hospitals, your neighbor down the street that beats his wife and kids, and most any other abusive situation that you can possibly think of. I'm not going to tell you that it's a cure-all. I don't know that there is one. But I will tell you that based on past evidence, that we can certainly make a difference in reducing these things, even though we may not totally eliminate them. However, I want to believe that that is possible, because it kind of bothers me to live in a world where people treat other people so abusively. really bothers me to share our natural resources with people that do this. After all, they breathe the air and drink the water. I think it's a terrible waste of natural resources that these people are doing this. So let's see if we can do something about it. One of the reasons, or two of the reasons maybe, that evil exists upon this earth is one is because of negative spiritual influence. You might call it possession or even demonic possession. Yeah, I know most civilized white people don't want to believe these things. But I tell folks, disbelief in the law of gravity is not going to prevent you from falling over a cliff or down the stairs. So just because this might not be within your present realm of thinking does not mean that it doesn't exist. It just means you aren't aware of it. So I'd like to make you aware of some things today. And not only make you aware of it, I would like to show you what you can do about it. And if you still have problems, I'd like to do it for you. Because the way we film things is we put a thought and an intent into these films, that as you play them, and you have the mentality to direct this energy that you're now watching on your TV screen to your project, whatever your project may be. If you can properly do this, and all it really takes is a strong intent, then you can direct the energy that I'm going to be producing here and today, and you direct it to wherever you think it's most needed. And the good thing about this is you don't need to buy a permit. You don't need to ask anybody else if you can do it, and you don't even need to tell anybody else you're doing it. That's the good thing about the way we're doing these things. It makes it very safe, very convenient for you, and you can learn at the same time you're watching me. Now, I hope you go beyond just watching this and put it to use. So let's get started. I do most of my energy work with dowsing. And dowsing is simply nothing more than the movement of a physical object or physical tool, such as this pendulum right here, which is made out of a bullet. And this is what I always use because I'm comfortable with it and I like it. It just fits my personality and I use what fits me. You may not want to do that. That's okay. Use whatever you're comfortable with. In many of the films I make, I use what I call a bobber that moves like this. But today we're just going to be using a pendulum. And really that's all that's needed. Now there's nothing magical about it. All it's for is to help focus intent. So since negative spiritual influence is a major factor in why evil exists, and also another major factor is because good people do nothing, let's give you a way to do something and let's get started. So we want to address whatever project that you are working on today. I am going to direct this to human trafficking, but you can adapt it to whatever your need is. So all I'm going to do here is ask my spirit guide to get involved to help us out, because I work with the spirit world. I really don't do anything on my own. I just ask that it be done, because we have a tremendous amount of contact and help from the spirit world if we would just use it. So I decided to put it to use. So with a pendulum, this is a yes, this is a no, this is a clockwise circle, which means we are sending energy, and this is a counterclockwise circle, which means we are removing energy. That's all explanation we have time for. We have other films giving you to this in more detail. So I'm going to ask my spirit guide if they're willing and able to get involved here today. And the answer is yes. Any reason not to? And the answer is no. Is this a good thing to do? Yes, it is. Okay, there's not really any need to ask any more questions. I usually only ask 2 questions of any information I get. Number 1 is, does it work? And number 2 is, does it help? There's really no need to ask the 3rd question. Okay? So I'm going to ask my spirit guide here, actually thank him more than anything else, to go to the places that you're focusing on here and take away the negative spirit guides that any of these abusive people may have, or any of the victims for that matter. And take away any negative entities of either the abuser or the victim. Take them to the other side. Now watch this. Give them appropriate treatment, send them on where they're going. What you just saw, folks, was a mass depossession. I do it about every week somewhere for an audience across America. And we get results. How do we know? Well, we get feedback. Now, I realize that I may be stretching your belief system a bit, but that's okay, because once the mind is expanded, it can never return to its original size. So I do a lot of things to help expand people's minds. The next thing we're going to do is address demonic forces. Now, at the end of this film, we're going to show you the cover of a little book I wrote called Techniques That Work for Me. In that is a bare bones, no nonsense, down to earth, blunt and to the point description of how to make these changes. Right now, I'm going to ask if there are demonic forces involved in this, and I can assure you that there are. So what I would like to do is invite in what I call our spirit doctors. This is a terminology that I borrowed from one. The first person was Eugene Murray, who wrote the book on exorcism. I learned a lot from the man. And the term that he used was spirit doctors. And I know this sounds extremely simple to you, but we have so much evidence to back it up. All I'm going to do is ask if the spirit doctors are willing to remove the demonic forces from the places of abuse that you're focusing this, and the answer is yes. So I'm simply going to ask to take any demonic forces of any form, name, or description, take them to the proper dimension, lock them up so they can never return or do any harm. Now, you saw it move. Now, if you watched real carefully and you're skeptical, you're going to say, he moved that with his hand. Yeah, I know my hand moved. It always does when this thing moves from one direction to another. But I'm not the one moving it. It's the one moving my hand. What it is simply an energy or a power or whatever you might want to call it that flows through my body and causes this. I don't get into real detailed descriptions. Like I say, I simply ask two questions. One is, does it work? Next, does it help? This works and it helps. I see no reason to go further. Mark Twain is reported to have said, "We do not reverence the rainbow as the savage does, because we have studied it, we understand it, we know what caused it." He said, "We have lost as much as we have gained by prying into the matter." So I don't really pry into the matters all that deeply, just enough to get the job done. The next thing I would like to do is to remove what we call negative energetic patterns. Because scientifically stated, energy is impressed upon matter. Now, I would like to give you 3 simple principles upon which all my work is based. Number 1 is, all things are composed of energy, and the intelligent human mind has the ability to change energy. Number 2, energy is impressed upon matter. And number 3, energy follows thought. Now, I know I repeat these a number of places in different films and so on, but the reason I do is I want to make sure that folks understand how simple it is. Also, you might notice that some of the things in here are similar to other films. Yes, that's true, they are. Because whether I'm working on a person for a sore tooth or a cancer or a thyroid that doesn't work, I go through about the same list of things that would affect them. It changes a little bit, but there are a lot of similarities. But what I have found is I can stand for 2 days and talk to audiences and explain all this in great detail, answer all the questions, and somebody is going to shake hands as they walk out the door and say, "How can I use this to work on my family?" And I wonder where they've been for the past 2 days, because I gave them the best information I had, but for some reason they didn't get it. So if you think I'm putting this real blunt, I am. Please don't be offended by it. It's not intended that way. It's just I found if I don't say it, somebody's going to ask about it. So what I would like to do is neutralize the negative energetic patterns upon the place and upon the people involved in wherever you're sending this energy. And it may be you. Let's include you. Because a lot of folks watching this have problems of your own, and we want to help you too. Now, how do we know this? Well, simply you send me a lot of emails telling me that you watched it, and yes, it helped you. And I appreciate those emails, I really do. It tells me that what we're doing is working. So we're neutralizing the negative energetic patterns in the places in you and your subjects or projects, as you might wish to refer to them, anywhere that you and they have ever been, people you've associated with, and any events in your life. Because we are affected by the energy of everywhere we've ever been and everything that's happened to us. Please remember this. Your energy is your most valuable asset. Don't take it places where it gets trashed up and torn apart and brought down. Be careful where you put your body. And if you got to put your body in a place that's of low energy, then clean the place up before you go. That's why we put out this type of information. Right now, I want to fill those voids with fifth dimensional energy. Fifth dimensional energy is not something I can give you a real good textbook definition on, but it is the energy that my dowsing system tells me to transmute all this into. And it is an energy in which we apparently are moving. We've already entered the beginning stages of it and are moving into it. And hopefully we are raising the consciousness of people and consciousness of the earth by doing these things. Now, the next thing we would do is to remove any abusive mentalities, beliefs, characteristics, archetypes. There's a lot of names for these things, and they're not necessarily all the same thing. So I try to throw in as many descriptive words as possible here. So I would like to transmute, let's just use that word. Let's transmute all non-beneficial archetypes of abuse, any abusive mentalities, the spirits of abuse, the spirits of torture, the spirits of slavery, any of this type of thing. And let's transmute all this into freedom. Because after all, that's what this is about, is freedom. And the length of time and the velocity at which our instrument moves is a direct indication as to the amount of energy required to correct the problem. And you can see this is taking quite a bit. Okay, and that's done now. Now, did you realize, and I guess you did, that an abuser cannot exist unless they have a victim, and a victim cannot exist unless they have an abuser? It seems that these two classes of people find each other. Now, if you're in the people helping people business, and you are wanting to help a client that is a victim, if all you do is get that victim out of their current abusive situation, about all you have really done is move the problem from one place to another. Well, we want to do better than that. Because if we don't do any better than that, they're simply going to find them another abuser. That's probably what they've done all their life. And if they keep on doing what they're doing, they're going to keep on getting what they're getting every time. So let's see if we can help them out to where that they don't attract further abuse and abusive situations and abusive people. In that case, let's transmute all victim archetypes, victim mentalities, and the spirit of victimization and codependency, and let's transmute all that into freedom. You see, this goes back to principle number 1 that I told you a few minutes ago. All things are composed of energy, and the intelligent human mind has the ability to change energy. We are simply changing something that has not served people well, or maybe you, and we're changing it into an energy that will serve you a lot better and make your life better. The human mind has the ability to do this, folks. We have the ability to turn this world into a lot better place, but we're going to have to do something about it. Just wishing for it don't get the job done. Okay, looks like we've got that done. All right, now there's a thing called thought forms. And thought forms are thoughts that we create and we give energy to, and they really take on a life of their own. Now let me give you an example. If someone were to go to the doctor, and the doctor does some tests and says, well, it looks like that there's a possibility that you might have cancer. We need to do some further tests to verify this. Well, that just scares the wits out of the person, And if they're religious, they probably go to church on Sunday morning and say, good brothers and sisters, I want you to pray for me because the doctor thinks I got cancer. What happened? Every member of the congregation just created a thought form of the person having cancer. Okay? They have also created this of themselves. If you or your folks you're working on here today have always believed themselves to be a victim, they're right. They've created a thought form that will attract to them the people, the circumstances, and the events that will make them a victim. You might have done the same thing. Well, if you did, it's time to quit. So what we want to do, and I'm going to help you here, but you got to go along with it. Let's transmute all thought forms of abuse, torture, suffering, anything of that nature, victimization, anything, codependency, into freedom. Now remember, energy follows thought. If you put your thoughts into you being a victim, by golly, you're just wasting your time and mine here today. You got to put your thoughts into being free. Okay, another thing is curses. More people than you might imagine have curses upon them. A lot of people did it to themselves. And you might be thinking, why, I wouldn't even know how to do that. You probably don't. You did it whether you knew it or not. Now, there is such a thing as placing a curse upon another person or a place, and all it is an intensified negative thought form. Every time you have ever gotten mad and said, well, I'll be damned, that is a curse upon yourself, and you probably never had a clue what you did to yourself. Okay? Let's undo it. Okay? We want to transmute. Well, first off, let's neutralize. Let's do it this way. Let's neutralize all curses upon you, wherever you live, and the people out there that are being abused, wherever you're focusing this energy, and the places where they happen to be located. Let's just eliminate all the curses here. Now, in one of my DVDs, I believe it's called Energize Your Life, I have a very good friend who tells about how I broke 4 curses on her family, and who all had bad knees. They were kind of crippled up, and they all started getting well. And this had been going on for 4 generations. She thought she had bad genes. What she had was 4 family curses. So we got evidence. That's how we know it works. All right, we got that done. We have neutralized the curses. Let's transmute all that energy into 5th dimensional energy. Now, you notice sometimes I transmute this energy into freedom. Sometimes it's 5th dimensional energy. I don't really have a real strong reason for doing this either way. I just wanted to emphasize freedom in this particular film. Okay, now, what we find is a lot of folks have self-sabotage mental programs. They have self-hate mental programs, self-destruct, and self-punishment. If a person has self-sabotage mental programs, it probably doesn't matter how many classes they take for self-improvement, how many self-help books they read, how many affirmations they say, and how many prayers they repeat. They're probably going to find some way to screw it all up. Why? Because they have an overriding self-sabotage mentality. What I would like to do is neutralize all self-sabotage, self-destruct, self-hate, self-punishment mentalities of you and those who you're directing this to, plus any other such mentalities that we might not really have a name for. And any of what I call brainwash mentalities, which are based upon the statement of we are affected by what we hear, whether we believe it or not. That's another reason to stay away from negative thinking and negative speaking people. We got all that done, and let's transmute all that into freedom. Now, please understand here. Let me see if I can give you an illustration. You see that I am neutralizing something, and the pendulum is going counterclockwise. that means we are removing an energy that has been used in a non-beneficial manner. Well, visualization plays a big part in this. In my imagination, I'm simply piling this energy up here. So when I get done, I got a great big pile of neutral energy. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just energy. And it will be directed wherever we intend for it to. So we direct it into something positive and beneficial for those we're trying to help. Another thing that folks have are various vows that they may have taken. Maybe not in this lifetime, but if a person took a vow of poverty, obedience, loyalty, even a vow of silence or suffering or whatever, at the time they took it, they probably intended for it to last forever, and they were probably right. And it probably has followed them from one lifetime to another down through the ages, and they wonder why their life is so miserable. Well, those vows are nothing more than another form of energy which can be changed. So at this time, I'd like to neutralize any non-beneficial vows by any descriptions, any agreements, contracts, or whatever you and your projects out there may have made at any point in this lifetime or any previous lifetimes. You see, we're the product of our environment, our heritage, and our own past lives. Whether we want to believe it or not, I haven't really figured out anything else we might be a product of. And we can change our environment. I used to say we were stuck with our heritage, but I found that there were ways we could actually change the effect of heritage upon us. And I've also found ways we can change the effect of past lives upon us, which we're going to do here before we finish up. Now let's take all of that energy and transmute that into freedom. Okay? Another thing we find that affects a fairly large number of people is what I call negative karmic influence. This really has nothing to do with you. This is what your ancestors did. Now, you and I got the color of our eyes, hair, skin, and a lot of our attitudes from our ancestors. We also got a lot of their thought processes. We might call it genetic memory. The real truth is we're all a product of our ancestors, and most of us needed better ancestors. Well, that's okay. We got ways of doing that too. So what I'd like to do at this time is to remove or neutralize any and all negative karmic influence. And I realize there may be some of you out there saying, who does this guy think he is that can change karmic influence? Well, I'm just a plain simple mountain man here in the mountains of Virginia that believes that we can change energy, and karmic influence is nothing more than energy. So which way do you think we're going to be better off? If we believe we can do something or believe we can't do it? Well, it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? You're going to accomplish a lot more in life if you think you can than if you think you can't. But whichever way you think you're thinking on this, you're right. If you think you can't do it, you're probably right. I choose to think I can do it, and we got a lot of evidence to support that. And you can do the same thing. I have not cornered the market on any of this stuff. All I'm doing is making it available to a larger audience. Next thing is a subject I don't even particularly want to believe in, and it's implants. I won't get into the details on this for one simple reason: I don't fully understand them. But what I found is that there are people out there, and they attend my classes, that have implants from one source or another. And again, we won't get into the details on this. You may believe it, you may not believe it. Either way is okay. But what happens is they feel different when these implants are removed. So just on the chance that you might possibly have them, or those victims you're working on might possibly have them, let's see if we can deactivate and dissolve any and all non-beneficial implants upon those people who are victims and oppressed and abused. And it must be working, and it must be a heck of a lot of it, because look how long it's taken. All right, now, this next thing we're getting into is going to take a few minutes to explain. I'm going to be real brief with it. But it's based upon 4 simple principles. Number 1 is we have all the water in the world that's ever been. Nobody made any new water to my knowledge. Water has memory. That's pretty much been proven. And human beings haven't been very nice to each other, which is why we're filming this film. And this has been going on probably about as long as there have been people walking around on 2 legs on the planet. If those 3 statements are true, then it stands to reason that water would contain the memory of all the torture, suffering, slavery, atrocities, and brutality that humans have created upon this earth as long as they've been here. Fact number 4 is your body contains water. Well, my buddy Jeff Jones and I got thinking about this. Jeff is that fellow that I film every now and then and introduce to you that hasn't had a meal. Right now it's been 12 years. He lives on water. Very unique fella. And he and I got to talking one day about what we just shared with you here, about these 4 simple principles. We decided we didn't want all of the negative memory of past events in the water of our body. So we decided we'd do something about it. We'd remove it. What did we do? We simply, and no more than this now, said we want to remove the non-beneficial memory from the water of our body, and we want to do it now. And the pendulum went around counterclockwise. We realized in order to do this properly and sufficiently, we would probably need to adjust the surface tension of the water in our body. And I won't get into that right now either because of time. I want to keep this one simple. We simply adjusted the surface tension of the water in our bodies and in your bodies to allow the negative memory to be released. Okay? Now, we went through a series of detox symptoms, such as night sweats, can't hardly get from one rest area to the other on the interstate, have to pull over to the side of the road and find a tree somewhere, to having terrible body odor and a case of pimples. What happened? We put our bodies into detox by doing nothing more than what you just saw. For about 8 years, I had been conducting emotional release classes where people would remember very vividly abuse that they suffered as a child. Maybe it was a car wreck, but the worst thing we ever dealt with was childhood sexual abuse. And we kind of understood that the methods we were using were bringing up these memories, and the people were reacting to them. They were actually reliving them. But we also found they were bringing up things that could not possibly have happened in this life, like being burned at the stake, being hanged, being nailed to a tree, or being butchered in some horrendous manner, having arms and legs cut off and so on. This was not any fun. It really wasn't. These poor people would lay there and kick and scream and cuss and yell and throw all manner of fits while we were working to pull all these memories out of their body. Now, once we got done, they would grab a hold of us and hang on to us like they were never going to turn us loose and continue to thank us for what we did for them. Well, I'd done about all this stuff I wanted to do. I mean, the only reason I continued was because the people needed it, not because I enjoyed it. So we were doing a class a few days later. And just as an act of kindness, I mentioned to the folks, my buddy Jeff and I have found a way to detox our bodies. Would you like for me to show you how and help you do it? And they all said, yeah, we want to do it. So we did. The next day, we had an emotional release class. I was very surprised. All the people still had memories of being cut apart and butchered and killed in all horrendous manners, but nobody screamed. Not a one. And for 8 years, we had never seen anything like that happen. I really didn't know what had happened. It probably took 3 or 4 of these classes before it finally soaked in that what's really happened is we had removed the memory of the torturous events from their bodies, and they no longer had those emotions. Oh, they had the memory, but it really didn't make a lot of difference. Like they could lay there and, yeah, this happened to me. They cut my hands off or my feet, or they stuck a spear through me or whatever. But they didn't have all the trauma that they'd always had in the past. Well, we knew then that we're on to something here. It wasn't planned. We just stumbled onto it. So what I would like to do for you folks is to remove the negative memory from the water of your bodies. Now, you're looking for a long, complicated, drawn-out, detailed procedure. You're going to be disappointed because it don't have one. This is all there is to it. We're going to remove the non-beneficial memory from the water of your bodies, period. Okay? Now, we're going to adjust the surface tension of the water in your bodies, allowing it to release this memory. And that's all there is to it. That's a good thing about this work. It's real simple. You don't have to know a whole lot about it. You just got to do it. Okay? Now, later on, in such a class as this, the emotional release, we had a lady laying on the table. Now, she wasn't crying. She just said her stomach was in a lot of pain. And she said it felt as though her intestines were being pulled from her body. Well, I'm standing there beside of her wondering what to do about it when I could mentally or psychically see her intestines being pulled up out of her body very slowly. And one of the ladies at the table mentioned there was a method of torture over in England years ago that they did this to people. See, I told you, people ain't been very nice to one another. I simply reached up over her body like that, grabbed those guts, pushed them back in, and went through a quick motion of sewing her up. She looked up and said, "That's the best feeling I've ever had in my life." I thought that's a strange thing to say. But she followed up with, "This is the first time in my life that it feels as though my intestines are on the inside of my body." Now, I have no idea what it felt like that they were on the outside. I'm just repeating her words. I then asked, can I go back in time and change this event as though it never happened? You see, time probably is not linear as we think of it. Time is probably in dimensions. And we have the ability to travel from one dimension of time to another. That means we can go back in time and change the events that happened in the past, and we get a corresponding change upon the physical body of the person in the present. I've got another story for you here in just a minute. Hopefully it will verify that. But right now what I'd like to do is go back in time for each one of you. Before any events of torture, suffering, abuse, dismemberment, slavery, starvation, any unfortunate events of any description that ever occurred to you in any past times, you and your projects you're working on, and I would like to scramble the frequency of these events. That's just a term I use. And I would like to adjust them to the most appropriate frequency at that time, and remove the memory of such events from your bodies, minds, spirits, DNA, and energy field, and from all time, universes, and dimensions, as though these events never occurred. And it's still going strong, and it usually does. All right, that's done. Now, that, folks, should make a lot of difference in your life. At least that's my intention. We've been able to help a lot of people with this. Usually in the audience, the people will feel an energy shift. I hope you did. Now, what happens, as near as I can tell, is any time the body undergoes trauma, it creates an energetic imprint upon the spirit. That person with such an energetic imprint will at some point in the future attract to themselves whatever is required to fulfill that imprint. Now let's put this in practical terms. We've got over 6 billion people walking around on this planet with negative energetic imprints. Most of them are out there just an accident looking for a place to happen. If we have the ability to neutralize the negative energetic imprints upon you and upon those folks that you try to help, then maybe one of these days we'll reach what has been known as the 100th monkey. That is, whenever enough people learn something or receive an ability, then it becomes common to all. So that is our goal, to be able to turn this world into a better place, because it sure needs some help. Now, if you're one of those folks that think everything is happening just the way it's supposed to be, I think you just wasted your time watching this, because I'm in the business of changing stuff that I think needs to be changed. And that's a good thing about dowsing. You don't leave any tracks. People can suspect you do something, but by golly, they can't prove it. So if you want to do this work and keep it all to yourself and tell no one, then you have a perfect right to do that. I do wish you would share it with other people, simply because that way we can reach more people and we can do more good. But whichever way you're comfortable with, you just do it. I realize most folks don't have the courage to speak up, which is one of the reasons we got the problems we have, as we said earlier, because good people do nothing. Now, there are a few more things here we want to address. And yes, I do have a sheet of notes over here just so I can cause this thing to run kind of smoothly, and I take a look at them every now and then. I could do it without them, but it's more convenient to do it with them, and we have less editing in the video that way. See, I just lay all the cards on the table, whatever it is, good or bad. So we find that a lot of folks have a lot of fear, doubt, shame, and guilt. And I would have to say, in my opinion, that religion has been the culprit that put most of this upon people. In my class, I simply ask people to take a pendulum, take the chart, and measure on a numeric scale. How much unworthiness, fear, shame, and guilt do you have in your life? And the folks are surprised that they have so much. So I'll then follow it up with a question. Do you know of any organizations that use fear, shame, and guilt to control membership? And it always brings on a lot of laughs because they always say, yeah, religion. Well, that's true. Now, I'm not beating you religious folks down. That's not what I said. I'm saying if you have been in any organization using fear, shame, and guilt to control membership, this has had an effect upon you, and I don't think it's been good for you. Now, you can decide if you like it or not. If you do, you're welcome to keep it. But in case you don't, I'd like to have to get rid of it. Another thing is unworthiness. And fear is used in human trafficking. It's used in abuse situations. You see, if people are confident and believe in themselves and stand up for themselves and their families and work to help each other, they are not likely to be victims. So you may not like the way I say things. You may not like the way I do everything. That's okay. That doesn't bother me as long as you get something out of it you can use. Now, I am a believer in personal freedom. I'm also a believer in looking after your family, looking after your friends. I run into a lot of good people out there all across America that like what I say, but they don't really seem to have the courage to put it into practice. I really would like to help them. They're good people. So I try to set examples. That's the only thing I know to do. So which way do you think that you are going to set a better example, and which way do you think is going to be more self-empowering? To have a little bumper sticker that says, codependency no more, or buckling on a 357 and wearing it to town, wearing it everywhere you go? Which one do you think is the most empowering? Folks, I'm not a victim, and I don't want you to be one. You may not do it the way I do, but maybe you can find some way in between what you're doing and what I'm doing that you'd be comfortable with. So, in case you wonder why I talk the way I do, why we film like we do, first off, I'm blunt, down to earth, and real. Not polished, but real. Okay? Not only that, we've had an awful lot of results with what we've done. So, just want to share it with you. So what I'd like to do is take unworthiness, doubt, fear, shame, and guilt and transmute it into high self-esteem. People with high self-esteem and self-confidence are a heck of a lot harder to control. Not only that, they won't be victims anymore. Okay, now, there is another subject that's a little more difficult to explain, but let me briefly address it here, and that is called a fragmented soul. Now, I don't know how many of you folks out there watching are horse trainers. You might have heard the term breaking a horse's spirit. That is, you just beat him down so much that he has no spirit in him anymore. Yeah, he can still walk and run and carry you where you're going, but he's lost his spirit. A lot of humans like that, folks. probably for the same reason. They've been beaten down too much. Well, we call this a fragmented soul. Among the things that will fragment a soul are serious depression. Could happen under anesthesia if you go to the hospital for an operation. We have had to help a few people out because of that. Being in a car wreck, falling off the barn roof and hitting the ground. Overuse of drugs or alcohol. But the worst thing we ever found was childhood sexual abuse. It's when the spirit had just been broken down and part of the soul just leaves. Now, I would like to offer you something here as best I can, and if you will go along with the wording on this, I think it'll help you out. I'm not going to tell you that you can pass it on to those you're trying to help, but I'm not going to tell you you can't. I'll be honest with you. I really don't know, so you can give it a try if you like. But what I would like to do is go back in time for any of you out there before any events ever occurred that fragmented your soul. Now, that can be this lifetime or that can be another lifetime. And your instrument is going to run counterclockwise. Okay? Very good. At that time, it's going to start going clockwise on its own. I have nothing to do with it. I would like to thank the spirit world for finding the lost, fragmented soul parts, bringing them forward into the present, provide them the most appropriate healing energy, and put them back in your body. That's just about as simple as I know how to say it. Now, I do believe that you will have to repeat something along these lines with a strong intent for this to work for you. And you can take the same words and share them with someone else, but I really think that they're going to have to participate in this themselves. But if you want to do an experiment and see if you can do it for them, well, you go right ahead, because if your intentions are good, you're not going to do any harm. What I'm saying is sometimes there's just a certain amount you can do for other people, and then they've got to get involved in helping themselves. Another thing that affects a lot of people, and a lot of really good people, is that they didn't feel wanted when they were born. And this is not necessarily the fault of the parents, because when the mother is carrying the baby feels the emotions of the mother and takes everything personal. One of the ways I say it, the mama could kick the cat out the door, and the baby feels it and takes it personal. Being born in impoverished conditions, in a home where people fight all the time, would cause a baby not to feel wanted when it was born. Jealous older brothers and sisters might be a factor. Impoverished conditions of wondering how they're going to feed, look after, and care for another baby. And a lot of fear of just being parents, or a difficult birth, C-section, or getting a baby's head by the forceps and pulling it out. That's not going to make the baby feel wanted. So any of these things can affect a person, and does. What will happen, it creates a belief system of not being wanted. The person will then grow up, become an adult, and go through life attracting to themselves whatever it takes to support this belief system. It may have happened to you. I hope it didn't, but I just know from experience it's happened to a lot of people. So let me offer you some help here. Let's go back in time until the moment you were born. And at that time, let's remove the emotions of the beliefs, thoughts, memories, and conditions that would have prevented you from feeling loved, wanted, accepted, and safe. If these were thoughts of your mother, the doctor in the delivery room, anyone else associated with it, we're including all factors here that existed. Now, that's going counterclockwise, but it's going to stop, and it's going to turn the other way. Whether I do anything about it or not, it's just what happens. At this time, we're going to take all that energy that we just neutralized and transform it into the most appropriate energy that would cause you to feel loved, wanted, accepted, and safe at the time you were born, and bring this energy forward into the present and into the future. And this does definitely apply to those people, those victims you're working on out there today. We know we can send this one to people. The soul retrieval, they may have to get involved themselves. But this one here, I think we can send to people even without their knowledge. I realize that this is a stretch for your imagination, but here again, I have a choice. I either tell you about it or I don't. Which way do you think you're going to be better off? We have now covered most of the things, or perhaps all the things that I could think of that would cause a person to be a victim of any type of abusive situation. Now, we have addressed the victims. We have addressed the abusers. We have depossessed the abusers, removed their abusive tendencies and all that. But we've done a lot more work on the victims than we have the abusers. Now, there's one another thing here, and it's called mass consciousness. Mass consciousness is the combined thought forms of human beings. So what let's do here, let's take mass consciousness, any negative effects of mass consciousness that would support victimization, codependency, and abuse in any form, and let's transmute all that into freedom. See, folks, everything within our world and universe is composed of energy, and you and me can change energy. And when we do, we change the world, and it's going to take a little time maybe, but enough of us get busy at it, it's going to take less time, and you can make a big difference. Now, that pretty much eliminates all of the negatives, all that I can think of at this time. If you think of more, you feel free just to throw them in the mix when you're working on this. But I find that a lot of folks don't have any love in their body. This is another experiment I do with my classes. I simply say, get out your pendulum, get out your chart, and ask this question. How much love do you have in your body? And they're surprised. It's not nearly as good as they thought it was. Next is, how much forgiveness do you have? And that is forgiveness of yourself. How much acceptance do you have? How much freedom do you have? And they found that they weren't nearly as free as they thought they were. Well, if I don't tell them, probably nobody else will. That's why I'm telling you this today. So what let's do, let's make this real simple. I'd like to do this for you, and you go along with it. Let's invite in and thank the spirits of love, gratitude, acceptance, forgiveness, prosperity, and freedom, and peace. That's fine to invite in too. Now, you feel free to add to this, whatever you think would be appropriate. Okay? Now, here is your homework. Every morning when you wake up, and teach other people to do this, every morning when you wake up, you thank the spirits of love, gratitude, acceptance, forgiveness, prosperity, peace, and freedom, and whatever else you want. Why? Because energy follows thought, and wherever you put your thoughts, you put your energy. Now, this has been rather intense, one of our more intense videos that we've made. This is the second filming of this one, because we had some noise in the background of the other one. Oh yes, it worked. We just wanted to give you a better quality. That's why we did it again. We like to put out the very best films we can with the most information in the simplest possible manner and make them economical and available and easy to use. So this film is brought to you by the Raymon Grace Foundation, and we'll be giving you our website here in a few minutes on the screen, and we'll also give you a shot of our book, Techniques That Work for Me, if you would choose to use it along with this. That's up to you. We're not just trying to sell you a book. We're just telling you things like this are available. And I want to thank you for watching. And I want you to believe in yourself and realize you can make a difference. And remember that the future is yours and you can do something about it. Thank you.